From the very beginning, the life of Paul Church was none too conventional. Born in space to terraformer parents, much of his early life was spent on ships and Genesis camps, by his own admission an unnatural life for a young man. Though he was very close with his parents and the crew of their ship, the Incunabellum. The crew consisted of 3 men, Taylor, Hewitt, and Johansson, who did most of the heavy work, and a synthetic, Judith, programmed as a botanist as well as being serviceable in other areas. For as long as he could remember, science had always interested Church, and he had always considered himself a scientist. As a teenager, he even received a small grant from the government to conduct immunization research using rabbits as his test subjects. He was content with his unconventional life. Church recalls the series of events that would lead to his horrific encounter with the Xenomorph at age 20. He explains, "Quentin and Louise Clark, both scientists, and their daughter Rebecca had joined us. We were transporting them to RLW-1289. We had one stop before RLW-1289 to retrieve a time box from a moon which my parents had terraformed 15 years previously. It was a routine data-gathering operation. There was no reason to anticipate any kind of trouble. Our first surprise was the discovery of another ship near the Genesis station. Since the moon was officially off-limits to general travel, we suspected pirates or smugglers, but we didn't find anyone." The company would later debrief Church about the smuggler ship. While not going into great detail, the hive that Church would be captive within had been purposely developed by humans, a band of pirates who considered themselves, quote, aspiring bug farmers. Soon after the retrieval operation, Paul Church would come face to face with the future object of his obsession. "We retrieved the time box, and would have left shortly afterwards except for our second surprise. Aliens. We'd heard about them, of course. We knew that we couldn't fight them with our little weapons. We knew what to expect. Brutal, bloody, terrifying death. Unfortunately, this did not occur. They brought us to their hive. It was so overgrown with vegetation that we hadn't been able to see it when we'd landed. As we drew near to the hive, the stomach-churning smell grew stronger. But once inside, it was intolerable. It was beyond stench. It was beyond foul. It was an incomprehensibly loathsome miasma that raped one's soul through the lungs. They brought us to a chamber and dumped us on the ground. They sniffed us and licked us and probed us. We had never heard of alien behavior like this. We had no idea what was going on. Then something happened. 2 of the aliens grabbed hold of Rebecca. They seemed to be fighting over her. They tore her to pieces as if she were a wet paper bag. Judith, with her standard human defense programming, attempted to prevent the slaughter. Aliens are usually indifferent to non-organic beings. These aliens weren't. As they destroyed Judith, Taylor alone managed to make a meaningful protest. With a grenade, took 2 aliens with him, the lucky bastard. After that they moved quickly. We were separated. I was forced into the bowels of the hive. There I saw what had happened to the crew of the other ship. Bloated, mutilated bodies hung everywhere. I think some of them were still breathing. I was attached to the chamber wall with thick strands of web-like mucus and left to contemplate my fate. How long I hung there I can only guess, perhaps 40 or 50 hours. During that time, my eyes and nose were scoured by the hideous stench, while sounds of distant human voices, screaming and sobbing and begging, assailed my ears. When the creatures finally returned, I prayed that they had come to kill me, but they had come to do something else. They had come to feed me. The feeding was interrupted by a hideous scream. Even one of the aliens seemed to shudder as the scream became louder, closer. It was Quentin Clark. What they'd done to him, I didn't want to imagine. He was completely out of his mind. He didn't stop screaming when they pushed him into a pool of green and gray slime which swarmed with tiny, tadpole-like creatures. He continued to scream as they glued his head to the wall, and he screamed after they left him. He screamed and screamed and screamed until his vocal cords were shredded, and then he made a horrible noise, like a goose, hour after hour after hour. The longer Church spent captive in the hive, the more he began to realize that, with the alien clan dying, the more extreme measures they would have to take to ensure the species' survival. What may be the most fascinating about the aspect to this story is how the slime, observed by Church, is very similar to the pathogen as seen in Prometheus and Alien Covenant. Its functions would prove to be also quite similar. As seen with Holloway and Prometheus, consumption of the pathogen led to rapid mutations in his DNA makeup, including his sperm, which would end up impregnating Dr. Elizabeth Shaw with the trilobite creature. The slime in this hive also served as a mutagen to alter human sperm cells. With no sign of a queen and dying eggs with no hopes to impregnate any hosts, alternative measures had to be taken, with Dr. Church witnessing every step along the way, though despair would soon take over. I survived because I had no alternative, Church recalls. I tried to swallow my tongue, but finally gave that up. Ultimately, my mind retreated into itself, and I lived in a realm of pure delusion. I was so immersed in this delusional reality that I barely noticed when they removed me from the wall. It never entered my mind to resist or fight. All I could do was long for death and wait to see what they were going to do. As I was carried out, I glimpsed Quentin Clark's form in the pool. He had begun to swell up. He'd stopped screaming. As we passed a chamber, something inside caught their attention. They abruptly changed direction and went in, dragging me with them. I heard the sounds of this new place we entered. Sobbing, sucking, slurking noises, soft, wet meat noises. Something clicked. My conscious mind began to function again. I was suddenly rational, and I realized where I was. They had brought me to their breeding pens. I recognized the woman. It was Louise Clark. She was impossibly gravid, hugely, monstrously swollen. I was tortured by a desire to do something for her, but there was nothing. Absolutely nothing. Then she delivered. She sounded very much like her husband before she died. If the aliens had hoped for hosts to breed in, the newborn things were obviously inadequate. They did not survive an hour. That was when I knew something was wrong with the Hive. The aliens were vulnerable. A new resolve was born in me. From that moment forward, I kept my eyes and mind open for information that would help me destroy the Hive. I swore that I would survive and use what knowledge I could gather to make myself into the deadliest enemy the aliens would ever know. I was taken to a chamber where I saw what was left of Hewitt and Johansson. They were beyond being able to recognize me. I was led to that stinking pool. I didn't wait for the aliens to force me. With a supreme effort of will, I put my face into the pool and made a show of drinking eagerly. I hoped that if I complied, I'd be spared of the treatment that had made inhuman things of my crewmates. From the start, this plan was met with success. The aliens did not molest me as long as I anticipated their actions. When I saw them doing a task I thought I could emulate, such as feeding one of their mutating captives, I quickly took upon the task myself. I'd do anything to prove I wasn't a troublemaker. My friends were past being able to fend for themselves. Soon the aliens stopped guarding me so closely, and I was able to investigate my surroundings, every square inch. I gathered as many samples of the organic substance around me as I could, and kept them hidden in a small recess. I actually conducted crude experiments, testing the reactions of substances on one another. The leech-like things secreted a solvent-like colloid, which the aliens were cultivating as a sort of medicine. I observed that a ubiquitous black mold produced toxins that were destroying the aliens. I had the key to their survival in my hand. I immediately put my findings to use, using the toxic mold to destroy the aliens' living medicine factories. It was amazing how well it worked. I made use of every chance I had to conduct this biological sabotage. It seemed almost wrong, destroying things which I once would have loved to study in depth. But I did the best I could. At that point, all I wanted was proper lab equipment. I used my crewmates' skulls for dishes, ligaments for string, arteries for tubing, and skin for forming vessels. Thoughts of escape became secondary to results of my experiments, which only grew in range and complexity. I had been reared to believe that aliens were all but innominable, and almost impossible to kill, that they invariably destroyed any other life form they came across. Yet here I was, surviving among them, stereotypically poisoning them, fooling them, and learning their secrets. True, they were not normal, healthy aliens, but they had been brought low by nothing more than a common mold. They were vulnerable, analyzable, conquerable. I had more knowledge about them than anyone else alive, and I could bring about their extinction in the universe. I was so obsessed I'd stopped wondering how it would all end. I was taken to a place where a large, sloping cradle had been built up out of alien secretions. Inside it I could see a human figure. The figure in the cradle was my mother. She must have fought them with everything she had. Her arms and legs had been bitten or torn off, and she was covered with lacerations. The remnants of my soul burned like a million suns. My sanity curdled and prepared to depart forever as I realized what they wanted. They wanted us to mate. I did the only thing I could for her. I killed her with my hands. Then the aliens grabbed hold of me and everything went black. When I awoke, I was again secured to the wall. The aliens gave their best shot. They brought an egg. Well, they tried anyway. The sickness had affected even the eggs. They had to help the facehugger onto my face. Still, it was stronger than I. It forced my lips and jaws apart and shoved its probe down my trachea and into my chest. I thought I had at long last been killed, but that merciful oblivion ended, and I awoke. As I pulled myself free from the wall, I could feel the heavy parasitic load cradled in my chest. The smell of death was everywhere. The aliens, the crew. I didn't look for my father. I didn't want to see what they'd done to him. I wanted nothing more than to die. But not inside the hive. I found my way outside. The fresh air, the open space, and the light were shocking to my ravaged senses. Finally free from the hive, Dr. Church made his way back to the family's ship. It was completely untouched, still intact with full power. While boarding and composing himself, he looked to the calendar, determining that he had been in the hive for 43 days. A distress signal was sent, but there was still the matter of the embryo inside of him. It took me 4 hours to cleanse my body. I patched my wounds, and I used the ultrasound to examine the alien larva in my chest. It was dead. Dead and rotting. Its removal was imperative. I had no surgical experience at all, but I gathered what information I could and set to work. The operation took 7 hours, but was completely successful. I guess I had a knack for surgery. The rescue party arrived a month later. I met them on my own 2 feet, but I was an atrophied mess. The company considered my experience most valuable. As compensation for my ordeal in the service of the government, I was granted a full biomechanical makeover. I've been studying aliens ever since. With that, Dr. Church had come to be one of the few characters in the alien universe to survive an alien impregnation, albeit from an unhealthy specimen. And combined with the morbid experiences in the hive, this makes for his perspective on the species to be quite unique. Although the 2 stories were developed decades apart, do you believe that the slime and the black mold, as seen in the dying hive, has any relation to the pathogen, as seen in Prometheus? Is it possible it's a diluted version of the substance? And do you think Weyland-Yutani's explanation of the smugglers developing their own hive was in fact the truth? Or perhaps a cover-up for a secret operation? Comment below and let me know your thoughts. Meanwhile, stay tuned for more on Dr. Church and his own secret experiments in my next video. And as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe for all the latest theories and explanations of the alien universe. If you have a suggestion for a topic, please comment below and I'd love to get to it. And you can also follow alien_theory on Twitter and Alien Theory YT on Facebook for more. And until next time, this is Alien Theory, signing off.